All right, so we're going to move on to our keynote. It's my pleasure to introduce Timothy Bouldry. First time I saw him present was at the SWANA and the ISWA Joint Conference in Baltimore. It was really amazing. His story is incredible. I was very touched by it, and since we actually brought him out for the NCRRA update in March in Northern California, and he and I had a chance to go to dinner. His story is amazing. He's amazing because of the work that he's doing here. So I'm excited to have him present to you all, and you can see all the good work that he is doing in other countries. Timothy Bouldry documents open dump sites and the communities living from them. He works with environmentalists and humanitarians to help create cases for governmental powers to understand the changes these places need. Bouldry's presentations have been given in conferences all over the world, explaining dump sites stories from countries in Latin America, Asia, Africa, and the Middle East. He currently resides in Nicaragua, where he is directing the ISWA Scholarship Program. The program includes 70 students living at 2 dump sites in Nicaragua and 1 dump site in Kampala, Uganda. Timothy, it's a pleasure to have you here. Please join me in welcoming Timothy Bouldry.
Thank you. Good morning. Thank you for that really sweet introduction. That was amazing. And thank you for the CRRA for inviting me here today. I'm always grateful for the opportunity to share these stories. And it comforts me to know that people care enough to want to listen to these stories. Like when people ask me, I'm like, really? You want me to do that? That's amazing. Great. So I'm inspired to be by your side. And I'm not much of a morning person, so I prepared a couple of jokes, and they might be good or bad. I don't know. So you guys seem really kind. Okay, so I haven't even told the joke yet. It's funny, all right. Okay, so why are environmentalists bad at playing cards? No, you might know. I don't know. Okay, they like to avoid the flush. See? Okay, okay. The second joke I kind of made up myself. China has recently banned plastics from being imported from other countries. So Pamela Anderson needs a vacation in Malaysia now. I love Pamela Anderson, by the way. That's it. Okay. I think she would like that joke. Anyways. Okay, now seriously. I've been documenting dump sites in developing countries for a little over 10 years now. I do it in order to bring attention to important issues environmentally and for humanitarian reasons. I do it it's not in my intention to point fingers at our global neighbors. In fact, the USA is the largest ecological footprint in the world, along with China. We are the leading culprit when it comes to looking at numbers associated to climate change. Therefore, when I photograph trash in other countries, I'm not pointing my finger and saying, look how mismanaged that country is, look at what they're doing to the planet. The same problems occur here. However, the problems that exist here are more hidden behind veils, or they're shipped away to other countries. And this makes it more difficult for me to personally investigate and to exemplify. But I am interested in moving in that direction to work more in my own country. But the point of my work is to find connections as a global unit. How did that bottle from the USA make it into an illegal dump in a forest in Latin America? It is the time to come together and share ideas and work together on these issues. So as someone from the US making images from other countries and the theme of waste, please realize that my work is not about race, but rather it's about waste. And I'm sure you're familiar with this map, the Global Footprint Network. This always changes, but just to remind us that we are responsible more from climate change. If you look at the numbers from the United States and you compare that to, say, India, India is still up there, but you know, we surpass everyone by so much. China's up there too, and then of course Europe is up there as well. And why is that? So I'm going to start talking about the different dump sites I've been to, and I'm going to go into a little bit more detail about La Chureca in Managua, Nicaragua, because I've gone there for 10 years and I've lived there for 4 years now. The dump site came to be because of the 1972 earthquake that displaced 80% of Managua. The rubble was transported there to a farmland. People who had no home, nowhere to go, migrated there to repurpose the materials that were being built. It eventually became the main municipal dump site for Managua. President Somoza was in power at this time and was seen as a rich dynasty that did not provide enough to help the people during a time of need. The Contra Sandinistas started a war that broke out towards the end of the 70s. The dump site became a safe haven for individuals who wanted to avoid conflict or hide. Into the 80s and 90s, business and recycling progressed. Nicaragua was and still is the second poorest country in the Western Hemisphere after Haiti. Word spread that there was free land and money-making opportunities booming at this place called La Churreca. The community grew to be 1,800 individuals and 250 families, and half of them were children. It became the center of attention and had a reputation of being a very terrible place. And at this time, Managua Lake was ranked the second dirtiest lake in the world from sewage lines that were directed there since the 1920s, including the dump site that was on the shoreline itself. So the watershed was very contaminated, and it showed in the visual health of the local agriculture and the community. The Spanish Agency for International Development Corporation funded a project with 39 million euros that would clean up the dump, provide jobs at a sorting plant, and build a community for the families. Everything looked like a clear and positive solution, but there were some bumps along the way. During the construction of the houses, there were torrential rains that flooded a shoreline called Manchester. The local Nicaraguan government immediately relocated those people into the Spanish-made homes. This upset both the project managers and the people from La Churreca that were promised these homes. So the Nicaraguan government were forced to build their own homes, but it was in very low quality in the same area. And this barrio was called Villa Guadalupe. So now it's home to 3,800 people, both from the dump site La Churreca and also the flooding victims from Manchester. At the sorting plant, there's only 580 jobs available, and they were offered, they're being offered a lot less money in their salary than when they were working informally. This leads to hundreds of people from the area going back into La Churreca to informally work. And they're also taking, they capped and cleaned the dump site, but now they're taking all the trash they can't sort and they put it on top of what was already capped. They attempt to create a wall to keep people out, and you can actually get shot at or go to jail for attempting to go in and recycle. There's a map of the area right there. La Churreca in the top and the village in the bottom. I was capable of sneaking into a prison. If you have a priest with you, you can pretty much go anywhere. So I photographed some of the people that were arrested while trying to recycle. And some of these homes are becoming like little sorting centers for people as well. And then just politically right now, I recently moved back because I have a whole team down there working, but I had lost a friend during this past year because of all the conflict and the civil unrest. And there's not a lot of local news about it, but there's a lot of political situations that's making everything a little bit worse. Now I'm gonna go into really quickly characteristics about each dump site. This is another dump site in Nicaragua called Chichicalpa. And I chose this picture because he's a sugarcane worker. And sugarcane is a huge business in the north of the country. And they use lots of pesticides. They come around in planes with these pesticides. And what happens is that when these people work in the harsh sun and with the pesticides, they get a chronic kidney disease. If they get this disease, then they lose their job. And if they lose their job, they migrate to the dump site. So I find a lot of workers like that there. This could be anywhere, okay? But this is in Jinotega. I've seen many cases where they just take trash and they throw it off the cliff. There's people that live at the top of the cliff and they go down and recycle. It just seems like, why would you even just throw the trash off the edge of a cliff? If people are trying to recycle, at least put it in an area that's accessible to them. In this image, I'm thinking most about the person in the wheelchair on the right. A lot of time I see very elderly people. This past week was actually the birthday of Gilma, who's 99 years old. I don't know how she does it, but she lives at the dump site and she's been there since her 60s. So she has over 30 years of living there. But you know, I feel for the people there that are either disabled, handicapped, and elderly and still have to live in those conditions. I also see a lot of bio-waste and a lot of like animal parts and things that get thrown here. This is all pig blood, and of course that's gonna change the whole structure of the agriculture there. And I just came back from Mexico. If you're a vegetarian like me, there was this enormous pit of just intestines. It looked like something out of A Nightmare on Elm Street. It was like, but speaking of Mexico, I just came back from Mexico. I visited 6 sites, and they're really working on advancing themselves in the industry. They're putting down a lining, because in many of these places I don't even see a lining. But they do have, they estimated 1,600 dump sites there. And this is a co-op called Sicanda. They have many different projects, and this was just one that I found. But what I saw here is you know, they're deciding on where the trash goes. So I don't think it's going to be common from what I saw that you're going to find illegal dumping in the country. They're going to organize and put the trash in one place, and then they're starting to line the dump sites, and they're also trying to create co-ops so that people are happy with their work environment. They have shelter, they have uniforms, and they keep all the money that they're recycling. So these people are pretty happy with this. Now, this is Neza 2. This would be like the big dump site of Mexico City. There's a lot of people working there. They are organizing co-ops, like 6 co-ops work in the same area. But I want to show you this because this is Neza 2, and now look at what was Neza 1. So Neza 1 is all green. It captures gas. It's just emitting the gas. It captures, and then there's a huge mall. There's like a little police station. There's like a sports center. So everything that dump site is now, that's what it is now. And then they're trying to transform the second one into something similar. But you know, it's a big problem and takes a lot of time. This is in Kampala in Uganda. And this is a women's co-op recycling here. And you know, this site is really big, so it's really difficult to try to manage. And I think they're doing a good job with what they can do. And the women were really happy about the money that they make. They make more money than some lawyers and police. So sometimes they're like fighting to keep their job because there's a demand for this work here. But you know, it has some problems, like look at how the proximity of the neighborhood. They did a really good job with capturing the leachate, and they're irrigating the leachate, and eventually it gets clean enough that they can run it back through into the watershed. How clean that is, I don't know. But you know, that's like the main city. Now you go into smaller areas, and those smaller areas are the problem a lot of the time. So here we have a small dump site, and there's kids that go there to sell bags to the people that want to recycle. This is kind of funny. This is my friend Sam on the right. And he has a nonprofit in Uganda to try to help bring connections and networking all the recyclers together. And so he's holding hands with this guy as they're walking through this small dump site in the market. And the thing in Uganda is, like, when I went there, I had this impression like they're kind of homophobic and stuff, and I didn't know what that was going to be like. But they also have a habit of holding your hand for extended periods of time. So like if I meet someone, like I meet another man and say, hello, how are you? I'm good. And normally you're like, okay. But they hold your hand during the entire conversation. So you're like, I'm good, how are you? Good. My mother, yeah, and then this, yeah. And then I'm like, do you want to date? I don't know what's going on here. Just some characteristics, and I'm pointing this out just because I see this in a lot of different countries. Glue huffing, medical waste, whether it's broken open or unused, he has a can, he's cooking inside the dump, and then, you know, little puppies and stuff. That's how I got my little puppy named Lana Del Rey. Don't make fun of me. Here he is cooking some soup. All right. One thing that's interesting, because say like a country like Uganda, you can try to work with the government, and maybe they'll work with you, maybe they won't. Maybe you're like private investigator and start kind of snooping around. Or sometimes like I'll just go to like the taxi driver and say, where does the trash go? And then I just sort of follow it and see what happens to it. And then you get like a real honest perspective. This taxi driver took me to this place, and it's a huge illegal dumping in the middle of the forest. There was a project, a water project that was from Switzerland nearby, but it was like they were almost dumping the trash on top of that project. Just want to show too that a lot of times babies sometimes are born in the dump. Like I met a kid in Honduras who the mother gave birth, left the child, someone else found the child, and luckily he's being taken care of by an older woman, and he's doing okay. But I just want to show generationally, this is something that can be broken. Like if we just don't allow children in the dump, that could eradicate that situation. This is another example of dumping like in a swamp, and there was a woman that needed to go into the swamp to take out the trash. And you know, there's alligators and things in there. Why put it in the swamp? Just put it like right next to it, like on the dry earth at the least, you know? This is an interesting story because this is a little evidence of climate change. What this is an alligator cage. And it's not there to cage animals. It's there as a cage that you go into to protect yourself from the alligator. So you go into the cage to fetch water. And there's so many alligators at this lake, this is in Queen Elizabeth Park, that the alligator snaps and grabs people and pulls them in. So they made a cage so that you can safely go in and get water without that happening. But in the mountains in the distance, all the snow caps are less and less and less. And because of less snow caps, there's less water running down into 9 rivers, including the Nile River that goes to Egypt. And of course, this lake as well. So because of that, there's a lot less water, and you can see it receding. And now there's like grass and everything growing inside the cage. This is an area, again, in Uganda where they were trying to create a lining. And this is just to show like the problems people have sometimes. Is like they did a really good job like making this hole and like, you know, making effort to make that into a sanitary landfill or the first steps of it. And then someone came in the middle of the night and just threw like animal skin in there. And now it's like contaminated. They have to go clean that all out. In Venezuela, I was really interested in a tribe called Wawau. And the Wawau tribe lived up in the jungle of the Amazon, and they would come down the delta 2 weeks by boat, and they migrated to this place called Cambaleche, where there's a dump site. And they were looking for clothes primarily because, you know, there's not a lot of Walmarts in the jungle. So they come down there, and they look for clothes, and they look for things to repurpose. They're not so much into like the recycling business. And they work as a group. They go in the morning, they come back at night, they bathe, they eat. Unfortunately, it's also in close proximity to red mud, bauxite. So there's an aluminum factory. This is them going to the dump site. This is how they repurpose. They might make a refrigerator into a closet or a flotational device. And then that shows, that's Google Maps, that shows you how large the aluminum, the red mud is, and then right next to it is the dump site, and right next to it is their community, and right next to it is the Orinoco River. And I would love to go down there and test that one day. In Haiti, just quickly, 2 things. Toutière is the dump site in Port-au-Prince. There were 200 people that were working there, and then after the earthquake in 2010, there was 2,000 people working there. So there's a big example of like an earthquake and environmental issue that is pushing people to work at a dump site. The guy in the bottom left, spoke perfect English. He was very well educated, but he lost his school, his family, his home. He had no options, so he came here. The guy on the right is lifting up flour to cook with. And then other than that, there's a lot of just dumping, like, oh, we're going to start dumping things here, and everyone kind of agrees to dump in the same place. And what happens is that along the shore, like say here in Jacmel, high tide comes in, pulls in all that trash, and then brings it all onto the beach. I also took interest in refugees and war trash and how that might affect a migration towards dump sites. And I found in Jordan, there were Syrian refugees that migrated to the dump sites there. The boy in the bottom, he actually brought his Zarati refugee camp tent with him to the dump site. This dump site is many hours away from the refugee camp, but he gets a special permit with his father to leave the camp, to go there to recycle, to make some extra money, and then go back to the refugee camp and then repeat that over and over. The different characteristic of Honduras and El Salvador is the mala salvatrucha. The gangs have control over the trash there, and they do it by paying the most money for the recyclables. So naturally, everyone wants, the highest bidder, and then from doing that, the gangs have control over the people, they have control over the land. If they're going to do a drug trade or an arm trade or someone disappears, it's a lot easier that way. And then also, they have their regular waste and then they have their bio-waste. And their bio-waste is just like in a different area separate from the regular waste, but people still go through it. And it has everything. It has blood, it had samples of feces, it has placentas, it has everything. This is in San Pedro Sula. There's more dump sites in Honduras. In Bangladesh, I could say a million things, but I only can talk for so much time. When I went to this dump site, what I noticed was it was very mushy, very methane-y. It was like burning my eyes. And I was like, what are you guys looking for? There's like nothing in here. And it turns out that, there's every year they have the sacrifice of all the cows. And so there's like millions of bones that go into the dump site every year. And so people are searching for animal parts for the bones. And then they sell these bones to a bone mill, and then the bone mill grinds it up and sends it to India. And then somehow India reprocesses it and puts it into vitamin pill, gel caplets, into the gelatin that you might eat for dessert. So you might just consider that during the conference. And then in the bottom, I'm just showing in a site like this, there's no kids allowed. There's someone there that says, nope, you're going to go to the school, you're not going to go into the dump. Okay, so I had a little love affair, obsession with this bird. It's the greater adjunct stork. It's like 8 feet wingspan. It's very prehistoric, and I traveled all through the mountains and everything to get to this bird. Bird wasn't so social with me, but it was really interesting. It got really close to the other people, but for me, it was like, I don't know this guy, and it kept flying away from me. And here just shows more, India, people living inside the dump. It's very wet, it's like very moist. I feel like there could be a sinkhole if you fall in the wrong place. In a different way, it's true here in Guatemala at Zone 3. This is in Guatemala City. I'm taking this picture from a cemetery that's way up on a cliff. And when there's torrential rains, all of that water comes down and the cemetery falls. I have some video footage that's from YouTube, thank you very much. But it shows you an aerial drone view of this, and it's really impressive how these angles give you the perspective of the massiveness and the problems. A lot of times the homes fall in, the cemetery falls in, and then there's a river that's flowing through the trash. So it creates sinkholes, and people fall in, and sometimes trucks fall in. So I couldn't access all of these areas, so what I was curious about doing was following the river. I'll just let it run a little bit more because there's some interesting shots. And they're recycling everything they can find, like little pieces of nails. And this is back to my shots. This is the cemetery. That's the massiveness of one part of the dump site. And then this map shows how far I traveled. I traveled 5.72 miles away from that site, and still the trash in the top right corner is like flowing, and people are still recycling many miles away from the dump site still. And you know, with those torrential rains and everything, there's a lot of water issues, and it mixes with the drinking water. So a lot of people there recycle to get bottled water, which seems like weird. When I went to Colombia, all the dump sites that I found were closed. And I was told that all the dump sites were closed, and everyone were put into co-ops. So an organization called Regio helped with that. And so say, for example, on the top left, this man, he has like an identification card. He gets to keep all the money that he recycles, and the local mayor's office pays a salary on top of that. Because now they have a Bill of Rights passed that needs to recognize his work as being a public free service for his own country and his own town. So this seems to be working there. There was like a small informal sector that I found in Barranquilla, but it was more like drug users and, you know, like a really small area. Did you guys buy your Trump straws yet? You know, $15 for 10, they're gonna go quick, you know. So those liberal paper straws, they just don't work. So. Okay, so the Eastwood Scholarship Program was designed to remove people from the dump site through educational and work opportunities. This year we have 70 participants ranging from elementary school, university, and tech careers. Most are out of the dump, but there are some individuals we're still trying to work with. Here's a graph that divides 19%, unfortunately, are still going to the dump, but they are going to a public school. 24% are not going to the dump and going to public school. And proudly, 57% are not going to the dump and they're going to a private school. So this means that 81% of the students are not going to the dump and all are going to school. And the program supports elementary, high school, college, university, tech careers. And in addition to school, we also developed the Eastwood Center. I meant for this video to start a little bit later because the center looks so much nicer than what's presented in these first frames, but I had bought one of the houses from one of the families, and then with that money, they were able to buy a plantation, and so they started doing farming on the East Coast. And it's kind of an ugly space, but trust me, I beautified it and made it into a beautiful, nice little space. And here we have our tutoring classes, we have English classes, we have kids that are we have young adults that are studying to be a doctor, so it's starting to be more required that they're bilingual, so we offer the English classes for them and also for anyone who's interested in working in tourism. And then in addition to that, we also have 3 new kids in Uganda. They're from the Kampala dump site, and they're going to a live-in boarding school. And this is new since January, and so far I've been getting good reports that they're doing good. You know, it's a complete package. That's why it seems so easy to do, because I have my friend Sam in Uganda to help me, and they're able to just get the whole complete package. They get food, they get rest, they get to go to school and church. And next is Melkin. I told you that there were pesticides in Chinandega that was affecting the health of people. He's going to talk about that and why they moved to La Chureca. And he's one of our Eastwood kids. And he wrote this song with some other people.
My name is Melky.
Quisiera que los medios a mí también me escucharan para que el gobierno ya despertara y este basurero de una vez se acabara. Este trabajo muy duro nos tiene muy angustiados y nuestro destino es tan malo que nuestros seres churequeando ay muertos han quedado. De este trabajo comemos y...
Esa. Ya le pusiste la cara encima. Se te va a ir. Dale el pescuezo.
Oh, pobrecito.
Mañana van al mercado a comprar
Ajá.
y se compran más cuestiones para echarle más pollo, pues. Sea de la marina.
Sí, ya vino, chaval, ya no la aguantaba.
Mi nombre es Melkin Javier Rivas Sánchez.
My name is Melkin Javier Rivas Sanchez. I was born in Chichigalpa, in the countryside. When I was 6, my family left for Managua to live in the Chureca trash dump. Because here we have a lot of illness from contaminated water. They put pesticides in the sugarcane, and these pesticides seep into the earth where our drinking water is. Then they run together, contaminating our water supply. You can't drink the water from the faucet too often, because there is a volatile illness called chronic kidney disease. Here, someone dies every day from this. La Chureca is an area with lots of smoke and contamination, but we didn't have many options, because here the people are dying and we were scared. If I had stayed here, I might have died too.
Yo vivía por
I
allá.
lived over there since I was 6 years old and started working when I was 8. Since I was little, I was always working. Now I live over there, the new barrio, Villa Guadalupe. They constructed all those houses for the waste pickers. On this side of the dump, there was a high, steep hill. When I was little, I would search in the dump for wood planks and 4 wheels to make a car. I would play with my friends and drive my car down this mountain to my house. When it broke, I would repair it because it was the only toy I ever had.
Ahí en La Chureca, yo me encontré
I
a...
met Timothy in La Chureca, and he asked me if I was interested in receiving a scholarship to study, and of course I accepted. He put me in a private school. He started to help me in many ways to leave the dump and follow my studies. But afterwards, I had to work at La Chureca after school to help my sister pay for her tuition, because we had no money in the house. I had to confess to Tim that I was back working in the dump, but since he also gave my sister a scholarship, I haven't been back since. Tim has a lot of work to do for all the kids here. He works at both trash dumps to help more children. He has helped this community a lot and taken a lot of kids out of the dump to place them in schools. I asked him if I could help him because he has helped me so much. Next year, he is going to put me in a school for technology and English. He found me a job working as a mechanic and bought my mechanic tools. He helps me with everything, so I help him in the office, with his car, and with other jobs.
This is Melkin now. He's working for CAT, C-A-T. It's like, it's a pretty famous mark. And it's a really difficult job to get, so we're really proud of him for that. And that's his dream. It's like, I was like, really, you want to be a mechanic? No, okay, that's your dream, let's go for it. He's gonna show us, just to get an idea of the neighborhood a little bit. This is a unique way to recycle by using bio-waste to smoke drugs, but just to give you a little bit of an idea of.
Con esto, fuman crack.
With this, the drug users smoke crack or cocaine. They look through the trash for medical waste to make the pipe from. This other one is not finished yet. They put the rock here and they smoke crack. They sell the crack in all of this zone. The buyers would go to La Chureca to buy the materials from us. Now we have to bring this to them here because they can't enter La Chureca. It's dangerous with the police, security and everything. but we have to bring this from La CRRA to here. We have a problem with the water. The water comes when there is a lot of rain and it runs through here. It smells horrible. A lot of the kids in the ISRA program live here. All this sewage water runs through to Managua Lake.
This is another family. I had ended up buying them a house. They had a lot of drama and issues in their life, and all I kept thinking about was just those kids, because I met those kids in the dump and went from the kid to the parent to their home and then around again. So this is just a story about them.
Bueno, pues yo le doy gracias a Dios porque my kids are in the ISWA program. ISWA has given me the support I need. Thanks to God for putting me in your path, because the program has helped me and my children so much. I work in the trash dump and was bringing my children there. But since the day I met you and brought you to my house in Ciudad Sandino, you started to change my life and the lives of my children. My life changed before in Ciudad Sandino because my husband committed suicide. He left me alone with my children, and now my life has been a lot more difficult. The family of my husband threw us out of our house. They wanted to take my kids too. But my mother fought for me and gave me support. She helped me a lot to move forward with my kids and not have my children taken away. I had a pig pen with my husband, but it was alone. Later, all of my animals, my horse and carriage, everything was stolen by my husband's family. I was forced to move to the street. They burned my clothes. They took everything and threw me out like a dog. I had nothing, nor a place to live. I just moved along with my mum and my kids. But thank God I met Timothy. He gave me support, put my kids into school, and now things are more secure. The help he gave me is to keep my kids studying for their future, to one day be great people, and for nobody to bother them. I know they will do something with their lives because now one of them is graduating. Thanks to ISWA for buying the graduation gown, and to my daughter Cynthia, who is moving into her next grade too. It makes me proud, and Timothy too, because we are fighting for their future now so that they can move forward with their lives. Our lives are sad and painful because every day we work under direct sun or during rainy times in the dump. We work from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. We recycle materials to be able to survive. In the dump, we find food to eat for my children and my grandchildren. We have a problem with the husband of my daughter because he committed suicide due to many addictions. My son-in-law abused my daughter a lot, and also my grandchildren. Now, the ISWA program has provided us with a house because we lost everything from before. They threatened to kill my daughter and my grandchildren. I am afraid as a mother they would do something to them because now his family is following us and bothering us again. With the help of Timothy, we feel more secure and supported. With his help, the kids study, and now we have this safe and beautiful house.
Good afternoon, everyone. I feel very grateful because Timothy and ISWA helped in many different ways. For example, I obtained the documents I needed to get a job as an armed security guard. I feel grateful for the support also. There are no words to express the huge help you all offered us. Thank God you are with us.
Okay, and just to think about steps for improvement, and just from my experience of being around, start by making unregulated dump sites into semi-regulated dump sites, meaning don't allow children to enter. This can be done nationally and then implemented into each mayor's office. Then decide where the trash needs to go in one designated area. It's not illegally dumped wherever. So enforce harsh penalties on that. I always think about, like in the United States, it's like, if you throw something out in that park, it's gonna cost $600, you know? No one's gonna pay $600 just to throw a can out. So no one ever throws a can there, you know? Now the trash goes to one place and there's no children entering. Next, organize a co-op and protect the co-op with financial and civil rights. So it seems like when there's an organization, like an NGO, that can help protect their rights, working with the government office, and then also working with the waste, and in the government, it seems to make a nice triangle. And then from there, start creating better work environment, create shade for the workers, line up the dump so that you can start to capture some of the gas. It's not going to contaminate the watershed. And then slowly making steps into a sanitary dump site and releasing those gas emissions. So in conclusion, I would like to say from my observance so far that the world, I hope, seems to be slowly closing their dump sites. I generally think the world is becoming cleaner, but I also feel like it's 3 steps forward and then 2 steps back sort of thing, and it's not happening fast enough, and it's very possibly already too late. But it's never worth giving up on, and we never want to be moving backwards. And that's all I have today. I still have 1 minute and 40 seconds if you'd like me to say anything else. Thank you.
That was really impressive. Can you
Thank you.
tell us what we can do to support your organization?
I'm going to be at the booth for the next few days, but you can go to eastwoodkids.com, or if you look up my name, Timothy Bouldry. I work under the nonprofit Right Path Projects, but I also have it doing business as the Eastwood Scholarship Program. So I have like a fund put aside for that. We need funding for 2020. There's always like this fear around this time that I have no money for the next year. And then EAST was the International Solid Waste Association in Austria, and somehow they always magically help me out around October. So I'm always hoping on that, but I always need funding too. So you can speak to me directly about it. And then we have the scholarships now that's in Nicaragua. We're testing out Uganda, and that seems to be going well. And I'd like to move into Mexico, because when I went to Mexico, I felt like everyone was so open, like the mayor came and visited me. They put me in an office and made me do a presentation in Spanish. They're like, oh, we don't care if your Spanish isn't perfect and you didn't know that you were going to present, just talk. And I'm like, that's the opposite of Nicaragua. They don't even want me in the country, And then here they are like, what are you doing? This is interesting. We want to help. We want to close down the dump sites. So yeah, just talk to me or go to eastwoodkids.com and contact me at shootforchange@yahoo.com. Or if you'd rather do it directly through Eastwood in Austria, that's an option too. They have an account for us.
I'm going to go ahead and ask a question since I don't see any hands, but I was surprised a little bit to hear your optimism at the end, because it felt like to me the pictures that we were seeing were catastrophically bad.
Yeah.
Can you speak a little bit more to where that optimism comes from? I mean, what are some of the 3 steps forward that you're seeing that maybe I missed?
Yeah, and that's a good point, because it's like, it's hard to like show everything that's happening all at once, because you have thousands of dump sites sometimes in just one country. So if I show like the most organized dump site, I might be missing the most disorganized dump site. And a lot of the pictures that I show that look horrible usually come from sites that are a little bit smaller, and the ones that are bigger are a little bit more organized. So my optimism comes when I go into a new country and say they invite me and they sit down and talk to me and they say, okay, this is everything that's happening. And then I go out there and I take a look myself and I say, okay, it's true. Like when there's an open dialogue going on between us, rather than me sneaking around and trying to figure out what's happening, that brings optimism to me. And then also when I see at least a lining in a dump site, or at least them enforcing children not to enter. Actually, a lot of pictures in here are from the Messiah dump site, like the kid in the suitcase and all of those. And there were a lot of kids in that dump site. And I started going in there and photographing and asking questions. And I don't know what happened, but about a year later, I did a checkup on that same dump site, and they hired someone to stand there and watch everyone that goes in. And the guy told me, there's no kids in here. You're not going to find kids. And I said, can I go in and just take a look? And I didn't see any kids there. So it made it like, okay, there's no kids here, but there's still kids in Esteli. But all they had to do was this, you know? And so I think it's happening very slowly, but that's why I'm trying to stay hopeful about it.
I see a hand here.
Oh, maybe if there's a mic? Okay, sorry about that.
I was just concerned about your physical health. How are you avoiding diseases and that based on your surroundings?
Thank you for that question. Because when I was in Nicaragua, I was sick like all of the time. And then at one point I had like H. pylori and some other bacteria I don't remember the name of, and I had a parasite. And when I had all of those at the same time, that's when I knew, okay, I'm sick and I need to do something about it. So luckily, I was able to find doctors privately, and you know, like there you can go to like a clinic and just get tested for this and that, and then find the solution. And so I did it that way. And to be honest with you, like I haven't had health insurance in the United States since I was 18 years old. And I've just been living, like taking care of myself, trying to eat right, try to do yoga, try not to drink too much alcohol. But like, but you just never know, you know? And my mother was just recently diagnosed with lung cancer, and she was a smoker, but when she was young, you know? And so you just never know. So right now, I want to find some health insurance to get myself checked out, because I don't honestly know. I don't know if there's something inside that I don't know, but yeah.
Hi, incredible presentation, and I want to thank you so much. I've seen pictures of dumps in third world countries, and one of the things that I always think of is that certainly in the West Coast, we're still sending container ships of material to Southeast Asia. It's not China anymore, right? But we're still sending them there, and we're sending larger amounts, it would seem. We're still not dealing with them here. We're still sending them away. And I think seeing these pictures and publishing them, we have to start making that connect the dots kind of experience between what we're doing here and what's going on there. Yeah. And I wonder if you had any comments on that.
Yeah, what I've been noticing, and you know, and that's been more in the news lately, and I've been being more observant about the actual trash, because when I took a lot of these pictures, it's only a few years ago, but I was focused more on what was going on out here, and keeping a check on what type of trash is there. But now, like when I went to Mexico, I was like picking up and like meticulously like looking, where was this made, where did this come from? And actually in Mexico, I noticed that a lot of it was made in Mexico, and it was recycled back in Mexico too. So they seem to have a little bit of a circular economy from what I could observe there. But definitely I think places like in Asia, where we're like shipping out large masses of trash, and then, you know, if China doesn't take it and say, you know, Malaysia takes it, and they don't have the capacity to deal with it, it ends up in a dump. And then you're like, we're recycling here, and then it ends up in a dump in someone else's country. It just seems like it's a total crime, you know?
Okay, one more question over here.
Thanks for the presentation, Timothy. It was very eye-opening, I think traumatic even for a lot of the grizzled industry veterans in this room that have been at this for a long time. Do you have any sense for, across the world, how many people are working and living in these sorts of dump environments? I don't know if you have any guesstimates on something like that.
Yeah, there's been like 2 studies that I can think of, but they're very different from each other. One mentioned 30 million and another mentioned 15 million. So I think unless I were to connect with another person, an anthropologist or a scientist, and do my own study, I think I could try to figure it out. But I also think the one thing that's difficult about waste is that it's always changing. You know it's always going to be produced, but you don't know how much it's going to be and how that's going to affect things. Like, for example, in La CRRA, after all the political unrest, it killed the economy. So the economy is not doing well, no one's buying anything, there's less jobs, so there's more people working at the dump site, but there's less things to recycle. So I think we can give an estimate, maybe around 30 million, but I would fact check that one.
David, how much does it cost to educate a child in your program for a year?
It depends on the country and the type of program they're going to go into. Generally, it's around $400 a year. And in that range, we're able to get the materials, transportation, a little bit of food, like something for lunch every day, and then the monthly cost of a private school, like a modest private school. Because sometimes we have students that are very studious, and then, sometimes we can find a sponsor that is willing to work with that person and offer more money, and they go to a better school. So the range is like $400 a year.
When your organization first visits a country, how do you explain your purpose or your mission? How do you describe what you're going to do?
The best way I found was I write the president of ISWA, Antonis, and I say, hey, I'm going to this country. Do you have any connections? And almost always, they know the exact person, some engineer that worked in landfilling or mining or something for 20, 30 years in that country, and they know everything, and they're interested too. They want to know about all their dump sites in their own countries as well, because that's part of their passion and their drive. So that's been the best way to do it for me. And then I see the type of options and things that are presented to me. Maybe it's a country that's very difficult to crack, and I have to kind of go there informally, tell everyone I'm a Canadian, and sneak around.
That's all the time we have for questions.
Okay.
Please join us in another round of applause for Timothy Bouldry.
Thank you. Thank you.
I know that's a really deep subject, and we've got a lot of stuff going on here at home, but it kind of puts everything in perspective, recognizing the work that we're doing here affects others, but we can also make a difference. So the scholarship program is pretty incredible, and I haven't told Timothy this yet, but I'm going to actually sponsor a child this year, so we'll chat later. Anyways, he's at the booth in the exhibit hall if you want to further talk with Timothy.